Welcome back. I wanted to do one more episode tonight. I was kind of on a roll, having fun here recording. This episode, I know we've talked a lot about the current stuff. This episode, I want to focus on the future and go over the top prospects in baseball and go over each position and see who are some of the future stars coming up. And you kind of see some of the development patterns, which is fun. I like to start off with this OSA ratings page, but I'd like to go team by team or position by position, kind of see some of the studs. So let's start this thing off with my favorite position is catchers. If you look at the top catcher prospects, you have how many guys here? About 10 guys in the top, or a little bit more than that, about 12, 13 guys in the top 500. What stands out to you if you look at all these guys? You see three teenagers up there, Rojas in Arizona, and a couple 19-year-olds. Vader is the coolest nickname I've ever seen in my life. Dr. Evil, and his name's Roger Dark Vader, so he's kind of combining those two super villains. Gotta love it. Got that 70 contact tool. Kind of a noodle arm, but incredible bat on ball skills there. And then you got another guy in Oakland. So you got the top two rated catchers both in Oakland. This guy was a 19th round pick last year. Been some pretty insane TCR here in June 2026, which was just like a month ago. He went up 15 eye potential, which is insane. He went up 10 power potential and 10 contact potential. So that guy just went from kind of a nobody, a 19th rounder, to hitting 340 and being a dominant offensive profile out of a catcher. So that guy, look out for that guy to turn into one of the top prospects in baseball. The guy's a beast. You got the guy that's 6 years older than those other guys, more developed catcher in Pittsburgh here. And then you got Perry, was a nice, really talented guy that went in the 5th round. I thought that was a little bit low in that one draft. I thought he's one of the better catchers in that draft. He's really has developed into quite a nice prospect. Juan Rae at one point was a top 20 prospect in all of baseball when he was younger. He had a 60 power tool and a 60 eye and 45 contact, and then his contact fell a little bit and he fell down the rankings a bit. His arm is kind of weak too, and he's not a great runner, but he's got some awesome ISO with a high power and eye combination. Pretty good hit tool from a 22-year-old catcher, so that guy's also a nice catcher. The weird one here is the fact that I don't even see him on here. The best prospect on this list, I don't even see him. Am I blind? I don't know if Boston moved him positions, but best catcher prospect, in my opinion, is Ricky Arroyo. I don't know where the heck he is here. Let me keep looking. I don't know if the OSA thinks he's way worse or if he has him in a different position. Let's just search him here. Ricky Ariola. Yeah, so he moved to DH. That's why he's getting a little bit DH at bats. But Ricky Ariola is probably the best catcher prospect in baseball. He's got the high ability rating, 55 contact. He's hitting 311 there in Double-A as a 21-year-old. That profile with the gap power, where the gap power plays really up in Boston, makes him just an insane weapon there. I guess it's funny he's listed at DH. That's kind of silly, even though he's obviously a catcher. But just the listing, I guess, goes by where they're listed at, not their actual future position. I've never seen this Edgar. A bunch of guys here kind of have a similar profile. So those are kind of some of the stars at catcher so far. First base here, a couple of the big bats. I think a guy that's rated kind of funny is a little bit too low is probably Phil Peters. I think Phil Peters should be a top 3 prospect in all baseball. He's down at number 28. Phil Peters has, I guess the OSA just doesn't rank those first base DH guys quite as highly, but he has a 60 power tool, 70 power potential, 60 contact. I think you can make an argument based on ratings right now that he would probably be the 3rd or so best first baseman in all of baseball at the exact moment. I'd say the only guys that kind of clear cut ahead of him would probably be Matt Olson in Colorado, and then probably in the Mets you'd have a couple guys, Weber and the guy from the Cubbies, Rizzo, Anthony Rizzo, are both in New York Mets. They're probably a little bit better. And then maybe that's probably it. Maybe Pete Alonso for the Cardinals would be pretty similar, but his contact would be a lot lower. Peters might already be better. And then in the AL, you'd have Pena, but he's more of a DH. That's probably a little bit better. So that doesn't really count. I think Jeff McNeil at 35 years old, kind of like a DH first base hybrid too. And then you got probably nobody, maybe Gavin Sheets the best one in the AL Central. And then probably, I guess you'd have Vladdy, I guess, is playing some first base. So you could argue that Peters is probably already Obviously, there's some guys that are kind of playing multiple positions, but you could argue he's already maybe a top 5 first baseman in baseball based on the ratings. I know he'd have to prove at the major league level, but I think it's pretty safe bet based on how advanced he is with those key categories: contact and home run power and gap power and avoid K, that he'd probably already slot as a top 10 first baseman, probably the future number 1. Guy's just an insane talent, so he probably should be a little bit higher in that list. Definitely not below Tristo, even though Tristo's a really nice talent too. Got an awesome eye, really good defender, can play third base there really well. So really nasty talent. Jeff Dobson is a freak high school talent that was a really advanced high school bat. It's come along nicely in KC, developed, and he should be a really solid player there. Bill Miranda's got the crazy ceiling because of that power. Bill Miranda's at the age of 20 is going to hit over 20 home runs this year, it looks like. Probably should just keep getting better. If he has any improvement on that eye or contact tool, he'll turn into a star. As of now, he's probably one of those guys that'll hit 230 and smash about 30 home runs a season from the looks of it. You got a really interesting guy down here in Jerry Crano in Arizona. Really nasty hit tool, not quite as much power. Crazy athleticism, but can't play the field, unfortunately. So he's a really interesting player. Should be a good enough all-around player to get away at first base without that big power. Still could get 50 power. He's had a little bit of power surge this year with 5 home runs. We had 2 in previous seasons, but 4 last year combined, I guess. But yeah, he has enough base stealing and kind of should turn into a little bit of a Swiss Army knife type player with the first baseman that has ability to steal some bases and be athletic on the base pass and be able to bunt and avoid strikeouts and hit some doubles. So really interesting player there. Who else you got here that's really stands out? Dylan Hoffman was the top guy in this draft at 18 years old. He kind of stands out as the only young guy all the way until you get down to Steve Murphy here. Steve Murphy was a 3rd-round pick this season, another big high school bat. I feel like he progressed quite a bit after the draft. I don't know. I guess not. So yeah, that's a couple of those first base names to look out for. At the second base position, you got Tamar Johnson at the top of the list we talked a lot about. Mike Hicks was a guy this year that has an incredible approach, really high avoid K and I, lacking a little bit defensively for second base, but still an average defender there. You got Corona Jr., who looks like more of a shortstop. Not a lot of huge bats at the top of this list. If you look at the green here, you see another Oakland guy that kind of stands out with having a huge contact tool, not much power. Big mentals, big defense, big speed, big avoid K. So really toolsy guy there in Oakland coming along, which is nice to see. A lot more of the talent is at shortstop. In most of these guys will move over to second base at the pro level. So most of these guys are listed as shortstops at the moment. You had a couple big time ones. Chris Weatherington was the 4th pick of the draft this season. I thought it was really cool that he signed for only $3.8 million, where most top 5 picks usually get about double that. Another big time talent, Yarborough's right at the top of this list, was just traded. He just got traded from the Dodgers over to the Guardians. He is a really sneaky player. When you first look at his profile, you think he's not like that big of a star, but the more you look at it, the better he gets. You got insane range, can play shortstop, and could probably be like a 75 second baseman. He has 80 stealing and 80 base running. Means he could be one of those guys that steals like 40 bags a year. As you see, a 37-4 ratio and a 38-5, 41-4, 2025, and then this season he's already got 38 combined between the 2 levels. So the guy's just probably potential to be the best base stealer in baseball. He can get on base a lot too with a low strikeout rate and 65i. So he can walk to first base and steal second and third and turn into a really valuable offensive player. That's an amazing defender. So the more you look at him, the more you realize why he's so high ranked, even though he only has that 50 bat with the 45 power tool. Just incredible skill set there. Could be really valuable for Cleveland. You got the young star here, Jerry, who's hitting well down in rookie ball. He's only 18 years old. He's a switch hitter with 80 current gap power as a teenager. This guy is just oozing potential. If he can improve on that air a little bit, hopefully get that up to a 40 or 50, should turn into one of the best, if not the best prospect in all baseball. A shortstop with 60 power and plus across the board offensively as a 70 runner. Just kind of one of the rarest skill sets in all of baseball there. That guy is a guy to keep an eye on as a future top 5 guy. But Owensby has slowly come along. He was the 1st pick of the draft, and he's really developed slowly because of the low hit tool, but his other tools play up quite a bit. The power is starting to come along and the range. He's also a fan favorite, which is nice to see for Chicago, get some of those fans back after a couple of rebuilding seasons. I still, even though he's only hit 184, still pretty high hopes for Bo Owensby. I think he's going to be really good there. And then you got an 18-year-old in Minnesota that's pretty high on this list. My scout doesn't like him as much. He's got an ADI, though, which is obviously what they like about him. A really interesting young player there with a pretty high ceiling. We'll see how he develops. He's actually got the nod on the OSA's list ahead of a couple more very developed guys. Jeff Teague, I think, will be a big-time player in Colorado. The gap power plays up insane in Colorado, like almost 30% up or something ridiculous. So the amount of gap power this guy's going to have is going to be huge there. 25 home runs, you won't really hit any home runs there, but it wouldn't shock me if he had like 45 doubles. The guy has crazy gap power and crazy speed combination, really good defense, so he's a really, really interesting player. Should be really good contributor there for Colorado in a couple seasons. Andy Rodriguez was actually peaked as like the number 3 prospect in all of baseball. As you can see, he was steadily climbing all the way to the top. Thought he was number 3 or 4 at one point there, but yeah, he lost a little bit of contact and he fell a little bit, but he's still a top shortstop prospect. Just doesn't quite have the contact to get away at the high levels they're worried about. But if that contact comes, everything else is there. So that's a interesting player. I think he has a pretty big bust potential, but he also could be really good if he just gets a bit more contact. The guy that's really shot up the rankings is Jesus Rodriguez for Boston. That was a big time pick last year. Don't usually get shortstops this talented after the top 5 rounds. The guy has a 30-65 power tool. And the guy has 65 range, has a 70 runner, has everything you look for except for the eye. The guy is 20 years old, and he's in rookie ball again. I think we'll see what he's made of next year once he gets up to A ball. But the guy's already a fly ball hitter with a big power tool and big speed and athleticism, and already, again, has that high gap power like a lot of those young guys we've seen. The gap power really seems to develop early for some of these guys. Which is really key in Boston. So this guy could be another one of those guys, kind of like Jerry Racino, the young guy that could be extraordinarily high in this list in a couple seasons. It wouldn't shock me if Rodriguez is a future top 10 prospect in all of baseball. He's number 168 at the moment. Really good player. I love my guy, Danny Basham. I thought he was the top high school shortstop in last year's draft, and he hit really well, 326 last year. This season, he's only played a week so far. I taught him third base in spring training at the major league level, hitting against pro hitters. Just gave him a week or two starting there to get his positional rating up. So the guy looks like he's probably going to be a third baseman with a 75 arm, but that range is still pretty good. If it could get to 65, I'm hoping he can maybe stick at shortstop, but he'll probably develop into a third baseman. We'll see. And then you get a bunch of guys in their early 20s here. They're kind of all about the same, all about 65 range guys with about 45 contact tools, like 40 power. Those top guys definitely stand out, though. Danny Zietz is a little higher than I thought. He must have had some improvement. Pretty advanced pretty advanced contact tool, and his range and arm are pretty phenomenal. That guy's a pretty nice looking prospect at this point. So on to third base. Third base, we got one of the best prospects in all of baseball, Cesar Angon. This was the big return in the trade to the LA Angels. They gave up Napier, one of the top shortstop prospects in baseball, who's now on Arizona on pace for 4 WAR. For a couple stud younger prospects that were off of 40-man roster age, you got Angon, who's one of the best prospects in all baseball, and then they also got this guy in the trade for Napier. So LA Angels had 2 superstar young, like 19-year-old prospects that are now 21. Unfortunately, this guy's had a major arm injury, so he's out. Also, a really, really high-end looking pitching prospect for Pittsburgh. But Agnon is one of the most high ceiling guys you'll see in this league. If you make an argument, maybe he's the highest ceiling. A 70 contact third baseman with plus power, 60 I, 80 avoid K. Strikeouts should be down to about 12% if he can get to that 80 current. And he's also probably got potential to be the best third base defensively in baseball with 60 range and almost an 80 arm and super high turn double play. So this guy, if he doesn't even really have to reach those ceilings, but if he can even get to 45, 50 power, even get to 50, 55 I, and just get to 60 contact or something, this guy should be an easy 6 WAR MVP candidate. He's that good. I think at the absolute max of his ratings, if he gets those potentials, he's probably got a chance to be the best player in baseball. Some Nolan Arenado in that guy. Absolutely amazing high ceiling talent. And then after that, you have Justin Colon, who's probably more of a shortstop. I think Texas is set there with Acosta, though, so it looks like they've trained Justin Colon at second and third. Insane arm range combination. Looks like a gold glove shortstop type talent. with a 45-50 bat. Also has a pretty good eye, kind of similar to like a young J.P. Crawford. J.P. Crawford out of the park always had a really good eye rating, about 70 range, and pretty good athleticism, like a 40-45 bat. In real life, he hasn't quite lived up to that ceiling yet, but he's still young. Really interesting profile from Cologne. He's got really nice ceiling with that insane defense. And then offensively, you got a couple interesting guys here. Drew Bowser looks really good as a third base. Crazy skill set with a bunch of stealing and arm talent. And then looking farther down this list, you got a couple of young guys poking their heads in here. At this 80, oh, sorry, I got my notifications turned on. Sorry for the distraction there. You got 313 batting average in rookie ball out of the 17-year-old. I'm assuming he was a $5 million guy last season, probably the top international guy. I didn't really look too hard because I don't have any money for international guys the last few years. I'm in win now mode. But this guy looks insane. 80 contact tool with a 80 avoid K. Just insane potential to have a high batting average. Not a lot of power yet, but also very young. Could develop a little bit more. And then yet another teenager here in this list poking his head through at also a similar profile, really advanced. A little bit more power, less contact than the last guy, but an 80 arm third baseman. So see how those super young, high ceiling guys develop. Nate Cook is really weird. He's one of the weirdest prospects in the league. He's got a 75 power tool, but he has absolutely no approach at the plate. So we'll see if those can develop. He could be really good. That power is so crazy. And the number 3 guy we didn't talk about is the crazy Yankees prospect. He is a guy that could probably play some left field, probably more of a first baseman than a third baseman, but probably get away with a optimal defender there with how insane his bat is. His power must have just gone crazy. Yeah, it was a 55 in 2022, 2021, now up to a 75. The guy's just developed into a crazy power hitter. Similar profile to Miranda in St. Louis. If you look at Miranda's profile, it's 45 to 60, 75 with a 50i, and 45. So yeah, pretty much the same thing, just a little bit less gap power out of McLean, but another insane power stroke out of him. And then lower down, you got a bunch of 20, 21-year-olds that are pretty far away. TJ Holland, I always really liked. Crazy arm from last draft. Fell to the 4th round, but looks like he is really good. That power's gone up to 35, really advanced 35-60 power tool. So really cool looking players there, obviously headed by Angon. And then if you look at the outfield, this position's pretty loaded. We got a bunch of insane center fielders. You got 4 guys in the top 13 that are center fielders, all legit center fielders too. Machado, one of the best prospects in baseball. Can make an argument he's the best hitting prospect in baseball, him or Agnon, because of that insane prodigal power at 75 with 60 and everything else, and 65 range. He's a 65 runner, another 5-tool baseball player that can do everything at 6'3" with 75 power. There's not too many guys that fit that profile ever. One of those insane guys. Lewis and Neal Shepard actually is probably a right fielder, but he has got a crazy bat. His eye's up to 55 now. Post-draft, it's gone up. He's just waiting on his power now, but he's almost major league ready in a lot of the other stuff. Just waiting on a little bit of contact and power there. He's a freak. This guy for Washington is going to be insane. I think he's gone up a bunch recently. Yeah, a bunch big July update. He's up to 30. So it looks like he is ready for the minors. I think they might wait one more year. He's in the complex still. So next year he should debut at 18. And this guy is another guy that probably has potential to be the future number 1 prospect in baseball. If he can get 5 more range and turn into a legit center fielder, I think he's probably more of a corner guy with a 60 range now. But if he gets up to higher 60s in range, I think this guy's definitely just maybe got the highest ceiling out of all those like super 16, 17-year-olds I've seen so far, just because he's so advanced. 30 currents and 35 currents on a 17-year-old are insane. Most of the guys at that age only have 20, and the top guys have like 25 in the draft. Just the odd guy has like a 30, but having a couple all 30s with 35 avoid is just nuts. This guy looks like a monster, absolute monster. And then Reggie Trillo, Trillo, I guess is his name, has an insane profile too. Another 65 range center fielder, 75 speed. The guy's hitting 308 at high A at 21 years old. He's stealing bases. He's hitting bombs. The guy has the whole skill set. He's probably a little bit too low. He's a lot more developed currently than some of those guys above him. This guy should probably be number 1 or 2 on the list of center fielders because he's so close. He's pretty much pro ready at the current time because he could hit at the pro level right now and play defense at the pro level right now. So this guy, another guy that should be an all-star at the major league level in Baltimore. Missouri is the first corner guy we've seen that's listed as a corner guy. He has an incredible. He was traded for Gio Urshela. This guy has 70 power tool with 60 contact, just a freak of nature. And then, actually, I'm just gonna pause it for a second. Give me a. All right, we're back. Sorry. Yeah, and you got another Braves guy on this list. Jose Ramirez has had another guy named Jose Ramirez, which is kind of cool, but not related to the other one, I guess. But had a huge progression. He's one of the biggest TCRs of the last month. He went up 10 potential I. He went up 10 potential contact, and his current contact and power went up 5, and his defense went up. I think his range went up 2. The guy's and it doesn't even show in that category, but I'm assuming his gap and avoid went up. So almost everything went up. This guy had a major TCR to turn into from a good prospect to one of the best prospects in baseball. Another star center fielder. There's a bunch of these guys that are just freaks. All these high range guys with the plus power. This guy is 20 years old. He's hitting 326 in rookie ball. After that TCR, he's probably ready for A ball for sure. Could probably be all the way up in high A or double A as soon as the year ends next year at 21 years old. Super talented guy. That TCR just changed him into one of the top prospects in baseball. Olivio is a monster. In case we've talked about him in prior episodes. One of my favorite prospects in baseball. 6'5" center fielder, 65 range, 75 speed, best mentals in baseball, and also 65 power. So just an absolute freak. One of my favorite prospects. And Jonathan Peterson is another guy who's just, all these center fielders look like 4 or 5 WAR guys to me. They're just insane. This guy is playing high A. He can steal, he can run, he can play defense, he can hit for power, he can hit for average. He's got the whole skill set. So we're right down here to like the 12th guys, and we're still talking about guys that are almost MVP type ceilings. Brad Rattray was the 5th pick of the draft for Cleveland. 70 range guy with 75 speed, plus stealing, plus power, plus contact. Just noticing a bit of a trend here. God, these guys are good. Robert Plant comes in this list about 15th. He is the top high school bat from this past draft. Looks like he's hitting 300 already, not surprisingly, in rookie ball. Crazy ceiling on him. Hinoja is a guy that was a top prospect for Pittsburgh that was traded to Minnesota. I'm assuming it was in the Sean Poppin trade last year. I can't remember. Yeah, this guy has turned into one of the better prospects. A huge range, huge gap power guy with 60 power. Just another guy that PD there has got in this system. He's got acquired a ton of talent in the last year since he started rebuilding. Looks like he should be. That's one thing I, funny enough, didn't really talk about was the fact that 3 of the 4 top guys in the pipeline are Minnesota Twins. We'll talk about the pitchers after. This guy was a 3rd pick of the draft this year. The Schrodner guy was a late rounder, 12th rounder that just has gone crazy and turned into the OSA's #1 ranked prospect. He's got 75 fastball with 80 stamina and throws 100 miles an hour with plus control and plus stuff and plus movement. Got the whole package with 4 pitches, just insane. And then that freak center fielder we just talked about, who's arguably the best hitting prospect in baseball with that 75 power stroke. Sitting, you don't really see too much of it yet this year in A-ball, but he's got an insane talent. He was traded straight up for Barrios last season. I think the Mets needed Barrios in that crazy NL where it's all win now for all these top teams. You got to give up some of these young stars. Looks tough in the future once these guys like Machado turn into superstars, but a guy like Barrios probably still worth it just because he's so good, but it always is really tough to pull the trigger on a trade and giving up a guy like Machado. The guy's just nuts. So yeah, that was probably all the position players we kind of went over. Still talented guys in this list. We don't have all day to go over all these guys. Billy Bowen, that's a guy's name I haven't seen in a few years. That was a first-round high school bat. That guy's started to develop really well. Haven't really noticed him in a couple of years. Kind of sneakily gotten better and better. Tim Long is one of my favorite prospects. A couple drafts ago, he was traded to Houston from Arizona. So yeah, that's kind of the hitting side of things. Pitching is going to be tough to go over all these guys because there's so many. But just to kind of go over the top few guys. Obviously, you guys have kind of seen the guys right at the top of the pipeline. I'll kind of go to these second-tier guys. Gordon has had a crazy talent change since he got drafted to Boston in the 3rd round. He jumped up like crazy in control and movement, and his profile is really nasty now. At 22 years old, he's got crazy 4-pitch arsenal, potentially 5th pitch if that change comes along a little bit. He's really nice at 10 there. Eads was a 2nd pick of the draft, and he is got everything you need. 6'8" with a plus and everything. RJ Larry's got crazy skill set, probably one of the most nasty movement ratings in baseball. He's only striking out about 15% of the guys he's faced in AA, but in high A he was striking out 20%. And yeah, he should just be a guy that just, as with that sinker, shouldn't let up too many home runs. Just the hold runner might be a bit of an issue if he gets in trouble with those walks at 45 control. But we'll see. I think he should be fine. He's talented enough. If he can get to that 60 stuff, he should be a wipeout pitcher at the major league level. Cedeno is just insane. That guy is already in the majors. Probably one of the biggest ceilings in baseball from pitching wise. He's got such a crazy fastball control combo, which is one of the most exciting combinations I've seen at 70 and 75. That guy should just be a star for years and years and years. And then you got, as you can see, pretty dominated by righties, but you do have a few really good lefties here. This Colorado guy is really nice, Hoagland. And then you got Horner's developed really nicely into a top player for Pittsburgh. Looks really solid. And then down the list a little more, you got that really nice lefty in Toronto. I like Bill Toledo quite a bit. Another guy with high movement. Probably the youngest guy I see on this list so far is the super high ceiling scouting discovery in Colorado. Guy that's 6'4" with 3.5 pitches, 70 fastball plus rating and control movement and stuff potentials. Really high ceiling on that young guy. He's really high up on this list. So is the first round pick high school arm from Texas this year, Arroyo. And then you got another Colorado guy that's crazy high in this list. Oh, sorry, that's the same guy. So they have a second guy down a little bit lower. I thought I saw another teenage guy. I guess I was looking at this guy for Cleveland. Another guy that's just got a crazy scouting discovery profile with an absurd 6 pitches. Every single one of those 6 pitches is 55 potential or better, with a crazy hold and stamina rating and no lows on the mental side of things, which is rare for those international guys in the game. So that guy's got another really, really, really beautiful skill set that should develop really nicely. And then down the list a little more, you can see a bunch of guys from this past draft rated really highly on this list. You have the 2 Miami Marlin guys that both went in the top 10 a couple of years ago, right back to back. Chris Cano is the crazy talented high school arm that lost a little bit of control, but he's still super electric. Got my nice high school arm here, really high up on the list that I took at the end of the first round. And then the guy I just traded away, Josh Price, for Adele. He's coming along really nicely. And so that's pretty much it. I don't want to get too crazy long in this video. I know I focus on the position players a lot more, but it's a little tougher to go off of the pitchers on this list just because they're all bunched together. But just a nice way to go over some of those top guys and show you guys the top prospects. Always fun to kind of look over the future of the league. So, and as a quick little recap, I think if you had to look at all the guys on this list after going through position by position, the thing that really stands out to me is, if I was to make a personal list, I would say about probably 15 of the top 20 guys are center fielders, which is just ridiculous. But the center field position is just so outrageously talented. There's so many high-end guys there. And then you got a few high-end guys that like one guy at each other spot. I think Agnon would be one of my other favorites. That guy we talked about, third baseman, Pittsburgh, who can play a lot more than just third base, by the way. Chris Ellie, and then I think Phil Peters would be right up there for me as a top 5 guy. So it'd probably be, if I had to pick a number 1 prospect in all of baseball, that'd be tough. Probably pick a guy that's a little more developed than some. I know that Washington center fielder we talked about is just insane, but yeah, if you like this guy here, number 8 on this list, this guy's ceiling is just outrageous. But Agnon would probably be number one prospect in my opinion. Phil Peters would probably be number 2, and then Machado would probably have to be up there at number 3 or 4. Machado is just nuts, and then Ricky Arriola on Boston would probably have to be up there. The catcher, just so much better than every other catcher right now, talent-wise. And then arms-wise, it's very close. I think Bill Miranda should probably be up there too, just because 75 power is so insane at that age. A couple other guys on this list. But yeah, they're all obviously really talented, but yeah, I think the biggest outtake I have is just these center fielders are so gross. And Neal Shepard is a right fielder, but Olivio and Peterson are just so good. Ramirez has turned into such a top prospect. Chris Ellie is a right fielder probably. You get the big bat Danny Hines here in left field. And yeah, Trillo is just so nice in Baltimore. So just in love with these center field prospects. Super, super interesting to see how these guys develop and which center fielders are best players in baseball in about 5 years and which ones develop and which ones don't. Didn't even get to these like next high-end guys here, and like Bailiff was one of my favorite guys from this draft, a 70 contact, 65 range guy. It's plus speed, just nuts. Some of the talent here. That's another Baltimore guy. Baltimore's sure building quite the pipeline here. Another guy in this list too. They got this left fielder, $5 million international guy. couple seasons ago. So Baltimore's loaded with talent. All right, that's it for this episode.